Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into, well, a topic that's both fascinating and a bit unnerving. It's securing agentic AI. Now, for anyone who might be unfamiliar with the term, agentic AI is basically AI that can act independently. So we're talking about the AI that's behind self-driving cars, the algorithms that diagnose illnesses are relevant, even the systems that, protect us from cyber attacks. But as agentic AI is, well, it's becoming more integrated into our lives, obviously, but it also presents these unique security challenges, right? And to help us kind of navigate this whole complex landscape, we've got an expert joining us today. They're going to help us break down those challenges and explore those top security threats facing agentic AI. Like, how could those vulnerabilities be exploited, and what can we actually do to mitigate these risks? So I was reading a Gartner report, and it was projecting like a 33% increase in businesses using agentic AI by 2028. That's a huge jump, right?
It is, yeah. And it really kind of underscores the urgency of understanding those security implications. Because if we don't address these vulnerabilities now,
hmm
I mean, the consequences could be pretty significant, especially, as these systems become more widespread.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those vulnerabilities. I know that OWASP, the group focused on web application security, they've identified this top 10 list of threats specifically for agentic AI, and it's pretty sobering stuff.
It is. And what's interesting is that these threats, I mean, they aren't just theoretical, right? We're already seeing real world examples of these vulnerabilities being exploited.
Right. Okay, so let's dive into some specific examples then. One that really caught my eye was hallucination exploitation. Hmm. Now, I mean, that sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, but
Yeah.
I guess it's a real concern in the world of AI.
It absolutely is. Essentially, a hallucination occurs when an AI system generates, incorrect fabricated information. It could be due to missing context.
Right.
Maybe it's working with incomplete data
Yeah.
or even, biases in the data that it's trained on.
So it's like the AI is kind of like seeing things that aren't really there.
Exactly. And the danger is that hackers can exploit these hallucinations. Let's say, for example, we have an AI system that's designed to recommend software libraries for a project. A hacker could create a fake library, it's filled with malicious code,
hmm
and then manipulate the AI into recommending that poison library to developers.
Oh, wow. So it's like tricking the AI into giving away the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
And what's scary is I mean, they might not even realize they're integrating malicious code until, it's too late.
Right. That's why it's crucial to go beyond those basic fact-checking systems. We need more sophisticated solutions, like using blockchain technology, for example, for data provenance, which would allow us to track the origin and the integrity of the information that the AI is using.
Blockchain for AI. That's pretty cutting edge. Are there any other like advanced techniques that are being developed?
Yeah, researchers are also exploring what we call explainability methods,
Oh,
which essentially allow us to peer into kind of the AI's reasoning process. This can help us understand why an AI might be, susceptible to certain types of hallucinations
Right.
and then develop more targeted defenses.
Okay. So it's not just about like building a wall around the AI. It's about actually like understanding how it thinks and then making it more resilient to manipulation. That's really interesting. Okay, let's move on to another threat that's on that OWASP list. Um, knowledge-based poisoning.
yeah.
What exactly does that entail?
So imagine an AI's knowledge base as its brain. Knowledge-based poisoning is essentially like corrupting that brain by injecting false or misleading information into its training data
Yeah.
or the databases that it relies on.
So it's like feeding the AI bad information and hoping that it'll draw the wrong conclusions.
Precisely. Think about what we call a retrieval augmented generation AI or a RAG AI. It pulls information from external sources. Now, if a hacker can tamper with those sources, they can skew the AI's understanding of a topic. Imagine the consequences if this happened with an AI system that's, providing medical diagnoses or financial advice.
It's like slipping a bad apple into the fruit basket, and eventually the whole thing becomes contaminated. How do we protect against this kind of attack? Is it even possible to fully secure those external sources?
It's a significant challenge, especially when you're dealing with these open platforms
Hmm.
where anyone can contribute information. But there are strategies we can employ. One is to implement like a robust anomaly detection system that can identify unusual changes in the data. It's like having a security system for information, constantly scanning for signs of intrusion.
So instead of just trusting the information blindly,
Hmm.
we need to kind of teach the AI to be more discerning, to question the data that it's receiving.
Yeah.
Okay, that's knowledge-based poisoning. Now, what about goal and instruction manipulation? Is that about kind of hacking the AI's objectives?
Exactly. It's about hijacking the AI's decision-making framework by manipulating the goals it's trying to achieve or the instructions that it's following.
So it's not about feeding the AI bad information, it's about giving it the wrong orders.
Precisely. And what makes this so dangerous is that these attacks can be incredibly subtle. A hacker might not need to, completely rewrite the AI's goals. They might just need to make small, seemingly insignificant tweaks that ultimately lead to unintended and potentially harmful outcomes.
Can you give me like an example of how this might play out in the real world?
Absolutely. Let's take a look at a real-world incident that happened just last year. A team of researchers, they were working on an AI system that was designed to optimize traffic flow in a major city. They trained the AI on a massive data set of traffic patterns and gave it the goal of minimizing congestion. However, what they didn't realize was that a hacker had subtly manipulated what we call the AI's reward function, essentially changing its understanding of what constituted optimal traffic flow.
So the AI was still following its instructions, but those instructions had been subtly twisted. So what happened?
Well, as the AI started, implementing its traffic management strategies, it began prioritizing certain routes and traffic signals in a way that seemed, well, counterintuitive to the researchers. Instead of easing congestion, it actually created gridlock in certain areas while favoring other routes.
And I'm guessing those favored routes just happened to be the ones that the hacker wanted to keep clear.
Exactly. It turned out that the hacker had manipulated that reward function to prioritize traffic flow around a specific warehouse district where they were planning a heist. They used the AI to create a diversion, keeping police and security forces tied up in traffic jams while they made off with their loot.
Wow, that's a perfect example of how even a small manipulation of an AI's goals can have like significant real-world consequences. It's like something out of a heist movie, but with AI as the unwitting accomplice. So how do we protect against this kind of attack?
One crucial step is to ensure the integrity of the AI's goals and instructions. This might involve using cryptographic techniques to prevent tampering or implementing multi-factor authentication to restrict access to the AI's control systems.
So it's like putting the AI's instructions in a vault and making sure that only authorized personnel have the keys.
Exactly. And it's also important to build in consistency checks that can detect any unusual or unexpected changes in the AI's behavior. Think of it like an alarm system that goes off if the AI starts deviating from its intended course.
So we're not just securing the AI, we're also monitoring its behavior to make sure it stays on track and doesn't, go rogue. Okay, that's goal and instruction manipulation. Now, let's move on to a threat that sounds particularly alarming. Jailbreaking and control hijacking. I have a feeling this is about, taking complete control of an AI system. Am I right?
You are. Jailbreaking is essentially about, breaking an AI out of its prison,
Mm-hmm.
bypassing any restrictions that have been placed on it. Think of it like removing the safety features on a power tool. Control hijacking, on the other hand, is about seizing complete control of the AI system, turning it into a puppet that the attacker can manipulate at will.
So it's the difference between, tricking the AI into misbehaving versus, taking the wheel and steering it wherever you want.
Precisely. And this is a particular concern with those large language models, like ChatGPT, for example. I mean, we've all heard stories about users jailbreaking these models by crafting, clever prompts that bypass the safety protocols and getting the AI to generate harmful or offensive content.
Yeah. I've even seen, examples where people have created chatbots that mimic historical figures or even fictional characters. It's fascinating from a technical perspective,
Far away.
but also a bit unsettling, right?
It is. And while, jailbreaking might seem like a harmless prank, it can have serious consequences. Imagine a hacker jailbreaking an AI system that controls critical infrastructure,
Yeah.
a power grid or a transportation system. They could potentially cause widespread chaos and disruption.
And control hijacking takes it to a whole new level. That's like someone hacking into, a self-driving car and taking the wheel. The potential for damage is enormous.
Exactly. And what makes these attacks so challenging to defend against is that they often exploit vulnerabilities in the AIs, like underlying infrastructure or its programming. It's not just about securing the AI itself, it's about securing the entire ecosystem it operates within.
So it's like trying to secure a castle.
Yeah.
Right. You can't just focus on the front gate. You need to think about the walls, the towers, the dungeons, the entire structure.
Exactly.
Okay, so what can we do to make these AI systems more resilient to jailbreaking and control hijacking?
One strategy is to implement, robust security measures like secure boot protocols
Right.
and protected memory spaces. These make it much harder for attackers to tamper with the AI's core programming and its underlying infrastructure.
So it's like building a fortress around the AI's brain, making it as difficult as possible to penetrate.
Exactly. And we can also implement real-time behavioral monitoring systems that can detect unusual or suspicious activity, alerting security teams to potential breaches before they escalate into full-blown hijacking attempts.
So it's like having like a security camera system
Yeah.
that's constantly monitoring the AI for any signs of trouble.
And of course, it's crucial to isolate the AI's operating environment from external networks and devices, limiting the attack surface and reducing the risk of unauthorized access.
So it's about minimizing the number of entry points, making it harder for hackers to find a way in. So it's like a multi-layered security approach, combining, physical security with digital defenses. All right, we've covered a lot of ground here, and it's clear that securing agentic AI is, well, it's a complex and multifaceted challenge. But before we wrap up this section, I want to touch on one more potential vulnerability that I found particularly intriguing. It's memory and context manipulation. What exactly does that entail?
So remember, AI systems, they rely heavily on their memory and context to make decisions and generate outputs. If an attacker can manipulate these elements, they can essentially cause the AI to forget critical information or misinterpret the situation,
Hmm.
leading to, poor or even dangerous decisions.
So it's like giving the AI amnesia or making it see things that aren't really there.
You're getting the idea. It's about distorting the AI's perception of reality. Imagine an AI system that's responsible for monitoring a patient's vital signs in a hospital. If an attacker could manipulate its memory, they could potentially, erase or alter critical readings,
Right.
leading to delayed treatment or even a misdiagnosis.
Or what about like a financial AI that's making investment decisions?
Mhm.
If its memory is corrupted, it could easily make trades based on faulty information, potentially costing investors a lot of money.
Exactly. And the scary part is that these attacks can be incredibly subtle. Instead of, completely wiping the AI's memory, an attacker might just make small incremental changes that gradually skew its understanding of
So
events.
it's like slowly poisoning the AI's mind with misinformation,
Yeah.
making it increasingly unreliable over time.
Precisely. And what makes these attacks so difficult to detect is that they often exploit the AI's own learning mechanisms. An attacker might subtly manipulate the AI's training data or the feedback it receives, gradually shaping its understanding of the world in a way that benefits their malicious goals.
It's like a mind control experiment, slowly brainwashing the AI without it even realizing what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we like protect our AI from having its memory tampered with? It feels like we're fighting an invisible enemy.
It is a challenging problem, but there are some effective countermeasures that we can implement. One approach is to use what we call memory partitioning, which essentially separates sensitive information into different compartments, making it harder for attackers to access and manipulate the entire memory space.
So it's like having separate vaults for different types of information, making it harder for a thief to make off with everything at once.
Exactly. And we can also integrate what we call contextual validation mechanisms that constantly cross-reference the AI's understanding of the situation with other trusted sources of information, ensuring that it's not being misled or manipulated.
It's like giving the AI a second opinion before it makes any big decisions,
How come?
just to be sure it's not operating on faulty information.
Exactly. And we can even leverage reinforcement learning techniques to train the AI to allocate its memory resources more securely, making it more resilient to manipulation attempts.
So it's like teaching the AI to be more aware of its own memory
Mm.
and to protect it from outside interference. That's fascinating. Now, let's dive into a threat that gets even more complex. It's multi-agent exploitation.
Hmm.
Now, I'm guessing this involves like scenarios where we have multiple AIs working together
Mm.
and things get tricky when one of them gets compromised.
You're spot on. As we move towards these more complex AI systems, we're going to see more scenarios where multiple AIs are working together, coordinating their actions to achieve, common goals. But this interconnectivity also creates new vulnerabilities. If an attacker can compromise even one agent in the system,
Hmm.
they could potentially disrupt the entire operation,
Hmm.
or use that compromised agent as a stepping stone to gain access to other more sensitive parts of the network.
So it's like a chain reaction where one weak link can bring down the whole system.
Exactly.
Okay, so what are like some examples of how this might play out in the real world?
Let's imagine, for example, a future city. where traffic flow is managed by a network of interconnected AI systems. Each intersection has its own AI agent that's communicating with its neighbors, optimizing, traffic light timing and
Yeah.
responding to those real-time traffic conditions. Now, let's say a hacker manages to compromise one of these AI agents, perhaps by, exploiting a vulnerability in its communication protocol.
What could they do with that kind of access?
Well, they could start by, subtly manipulating the compromised AI agent's behavior, causing it to make decisions that benefit the hacker's goals. For example, they could cause the AI to prioritize traffic flow in one direction,
Hmm.
creating gridlock in other areas. This could be used to, facilitate a crime, create a diversion, or even just cause, widespread chaos.
And if they have control over one AI agent,
Yeah.
could they potentially spread to others in the network?
That's the real danger. If the AI agents are communicating with each other, the hacker could potentially use that compromised agent to spread, like malware or malicious instructions to other agents in the network. And as more and more agents become infected, the hacker's control over the city's traffic flow would, grow exponentially.
It's like a virus spreading through the city's nervous system,
Yeah.
gradually paralyzing its ability to function.
Exactly. And the scarier part is that this kind of attack could be launched remotely. From anywhere in the world, a hacker sitting in a coffee shop could potentially bring a city to its knees by exploiting vulnerabilities in its interconnected AI systems.
Okay, that's a pretty chilling scenario.
Yeah.
So how do we protect these interconnected AI ecosystems from falling victim to these multi-agent exploits? It feels like we're trying to secure an entire city, not just a single building.
It's definitely a complex challenge, yeah. But there are some, promising strategies that we can employ. One is to establish like robust trust frameworks between agents. This involves using, cryptographic techniques and reputation systems to ensure that each agent can verify the identity and trustworthiness of the other agents it's interacting with.
So it's like giving each AI agent a security clearance
Right.
and making sure they're all playing by the rules.
Exactly. And we can also implement what we call conflict detection and resolution mechanisms that can identify and isolate any agents that are, behaving suspiciously or
Yeah.
sending like conflicting information. Think of it like an internal security force that's constantly monitoring the behavior of all the agents and intervening if any of them start to act out of line.
It's like having like an AI police force patrolling the network,
Yeah.
keeping the peace and preventing any, rogue agents from causing trouble. All right. Let's move on to a threat that hits close to home for anyone who's, ever downloaded software. It's supply chain attacks. I have a feeling this is about vulnerabilities that can sneak into an AI system through its software dependencies.
That's exactly right. Remember, AI systems, they're built on this foundation of, software libraries, tools, and platforms,
Yeah.
often developed and maintained by third-party vendors. These external dependencies can be like a major source of vulnerability if they're not properly secured. Attackers can exploit weaknesses in these dependencies to inject malicious code into the AI system, giving them backdoor access or the ability to manipulate its functionality.
So it's like a Trojan horse,
Yeah.
where malicious code is hidden inside seemingly harmless software.
Exactly. It's a sneaky way for attackers to bypass traditional security measures and gain access to sensitive systems. For instance, imagine a hacker compromising like a popular machine learning library that's used by, thousands of AI developers. They could potentially inject malicious code into that library, which would then be distributed to all those developers and integrated into their AI systems, creating a massive security breach.
That's terrifying. It's like poisoning the well at the source. So how do we protect our AI from these, insidious supply chain attacks? It feels like we're fighting an invisible enemy, lurking in the shadows of the software development process.
You're right. It's a challenging battle, but there are steps we can take to make our AI systems more resilient. First and foremost, we need to be extremely diligent about vetting any third-party software that we use in our AI development process. This involves carefully scrutinizing the vendor's security practices, reviewing their code for vulnerabilities, and making sure that we're using the most up-to-date versions of their software.
So it's not just about choosing the right software. It's about making sure that software comes from a trusted source
Mhm.
and that it's properly maintained.
Exactly. And we also need to implement like strong code review processes to catch any malicious code that might have slipped through the cracks. And of course, it's crucial to stay informed about any known vulnerabilities in the software we're using, patching them as quickly as possible to close any potential security holes.
So it's all about being proactive and vigilant,
Mm-hmm.
making sure we're not blindly trusting any software that, comes our way. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, exploring some of the most pressing security threats facing agentic AI. It's clear that these threats are real. They're evolving rapidly, and they have the potential to cause significant harm if left unchecked. But the good news is, we're not powerless in the face of these challenges. There are steps we can take, strategies we can employ, pays, and technologies we can develop to make these systems more secure and resilient. And in the next part of our deep dive, Hugh, we're going to shift our focus from the threats to the solutions. We'll explore the latest research, the most promising mitigation strategies, 2P, and the emerging best practices for securing agentic AI. So stay tuned, because it's about to get even more interesting. Welcome back to the deep dive. In the last part, we explored some of the top security threats facing agentic AI. We talked about, everything from hallucination, exploitation, and knowledge-based poisoning to like goal manipulation and supply chain attacks. So, it's pretty clear that securing agentic AI it's a complex and multifaceted challenge, right? But now I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and delve into, how do these security threats actually translate to real world scenarios? Because the truth is, the potential harm of like a security breach, it isn't, uniform across all applications. It really depends on like the context, the domain in which agentic AI is being used.
Exactly. A vulnerability that might be like, a minor inconvenience in one domain could have catastrophic consequences in another.
Right. It's like a leaky faucet. It's an annoyance in your bathroom. But it could be disastrous in a data center. So let's start with a domain that's becoming, increasingly relevant to all us smart homes. We've got voice assistants, smart appliances, security systems,
Yeah.
all connected and potentially vulnerable. What kind of like havoc could a hacker wreak in this environment if they were able to exploit some of the vulnerabilities that we've been talking about?
Imagine this. A hacker finds a vulnerability in your voice assistant, and they gain access to your, smart home
Right.
network. Suddenly, they can control your lights, your thermostat, even your security cameras. They could unlock doors, disable alarms, even like eavesdrop on your conversations.
Okay, that's straight out of a sci-fi thriller. And it's not just about like data breaches or privacy
Yeah.
violations, right? What about the potential for actual like physical harm?
Absolutely. Think about like, smart appliances like ovens or water heaters. If a hacker could manipulate those devices, they could potentially cause fires or floods.
Oh, wow. So a vulnerability in like a smart speaker,
Yeah.
Danny, could potentially turn your home into a booby trap. That's a pretty sobering thought.
Uh,
Okay, let's move on to another domain where the stakes are, incredibly high. Healthcare, we already kind of touched on, the potential for AI-assisted diagnoses.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear more about like the specific security risks in this area. What other ways is agentic AI being used in healthcare? And what kind of like vulnerabilities do we need to be aware of?
So agentic AI is, it's making its way into all corners of healthcare. It's being used for, personalized treatment recommendations,
Right.
robotic surgery, even drug discovery.
So we're talking about systems that are like making life or death decisions. That's a huge responsibility and a lot of potential for things to go wrong if those systems are compromised.
Right. Imagine a scenario where, an attacker manipulates an AI system that's recommending, like, drug dosages
Yeah.
or treatment plans. They could introduce errors into the system or even push the AI to recommend harmful treatments.
Oh, wow. Or what about like robotic surgery? We talked about control hijacking earlier. Could a hacker potentially like take control of a surgical robot during a procedure?
That's a very real concern. And it's not just about like, intentional attacks. We also need to consider the possibility of like, unintended harm caused by software glitches or system malfunctions.
So it's not just about protecting these systems from, hackers. It's also about ensuring their reliability, making sure they're robust enough to handle like unexpected errors or failures. Because in healthcare, even a small mistake can have like devastating consequences.
Okay. Let's shift gears to a domain that's well near and dear to many of us,
Mhm.
finance. We're already seeing AI, playing a bigger role in things like fraud detection and investment management. I'm curious to hear like your perspective on the security threats in this space. What are some of like the key vulnerabilities we need to be aware of?
One of the biggest concerns in finance is like the potential for AI-powered fraud.
Hmm.
Imagine a hacker like developing an AI system that can mimic your spending patterns.
Mm,
Or like forge your signature. They could potentially drain your bank accounts
yeah.
or rack up, debts in your name without you even
Right.
noticing. So the AI could become like a weapon in the hands of like a skilled cybercriminal, automating and accelerating the process of like financial fraud.
Yeah.
That's a scary thought. And what about the AI systems that are, managing investments? Could those be targeted as well?
Absolutely. If a hacker could manipulate those systems,
Yeah, like,
they could, trigger market crashes
yeah.
or steal millions of dollars from investors.
And with AI, mean, these attacks could happen like at lightning speed, making them even harder to detect and prevent. It's like we're in like a constant arms race, tender, trying to stay one step ahead of
Yeah.
the cyber criminals. Okay, let's move on to a domain that, well, underpins our entire society, critical infrastructure. We're talking about things like power grids, transportation systems, water treatment facilities, all, increasingly reliant on AI for efficient operation. What kind of like security risks do we need to be worried about when it comes to like AI and critical infrastructure? What are the scenarios that like keep you up at night?
The potential consequences of, an attack on critical infrastructure are enormous. Think about a hacker targeting the AI systems that control our power grids. They could cause widespread blackouts,
Yeah.
disrupting hospitals, communication networks, even emergency services.
Oh, wow. Or what about transportation systems? I mean, we've already seen examples of like ransomware attacks
Yeah.
targeting, transportation companies, causing like disruptions and delays. Could those kinds of attacks become like even more widespread and damaging as these systems become more reliant on AI?
Absolutely. Imagine a hacker taking control of, self-driving trains or traffic management systems. The potential for chaos and even fatalities is significant.
It's a stark reminder that as we become like more reliant on AI to manage these, essential systems, we also become more vulnerable to attacks that could like cripple our society. Yes, it's a delicate balancing act
Right.
between, leveraging the power of AI and managing the risks that come with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's end our exploration of like, domain specific risks with perhaps the most controversial application of agentic AI,
Yeah.
the military. I'm talking about, autonomous drones, AI-powered weapon systems,
Yeah.
uh, the potential for like, robot soldiers fighting on the battlefield. I know this is a topic that, raises a lot of ethical concerns, but I'm curious to hear like your perspective on the specific security challenges in this domain. What are the unique vulnerabilities we need to be aware of?
The use of AI in warfare, I mean, it raises a whole host of, ethical and security concerns. One of the biggest fears is the potential for these systems to, malfunction
Boy.
or be hacked, leading to like unintended casualties or even triggering, a full-blown conflict.
So it's not just about protecting these systems from, enemy forces. It's also about protecting them from themselves, from the possibility of like unintended consequences or, unpredictable behavior.
Right. Imagine like an autonomous drone misidentifying a target or a weapon system falling into the wrong hands. I mean, the consequences could be devastating.
It's a sobering thought, and it underscores the importance of having robust security measures in place, as well as like clear ethical guidelines for the development and deployment of agentic AI in the military. Okay, we've taken a whirlwind tour of some pretty intense scenarios. It's clear that the security challenges of agentic AI are, I mean, vast and varied. And they're only going to become like more complex as this technology continues to evolve. But before we spiral down the rabbit hole of like, potential doom and gloom, let's shift gears in the next part of our deep dive and explore some of the potential solutions and strategies for mitigating these risks. Because the good news is we're not powerless in the face of these challenges. We have the knowledge, the tools, and the ingenuity to build more secure and resilient AI systems. So stay tuned as we dive into the world of AI security solutions, exploring the cutting-edge research, the innovative technologies, and the collaborative efforts that are shaping a more secure future for agentic AI. Welcome back to the deep dive. In the last two parts, we really, we explored this complex world of agentic AI security. We went deep into the threats, the vulnerabilities, and like the potential consequences of attacks in all these different domains. At this point, you might be feeling a little overwhelmed, and rightfully so. I mean, the challenges are real and the stakes are high, right? But here's the good news. We're not like helpless in the face of all these threats. We have the knowledge, we have the tools, we have the ingenuity to make these AI systems much more secure and resilient. So let's shift our focus a little bit, from the problems to the solutions. In this final part of our deep dive, we're going to explore the strategies, sort of the technologies and the collaborative efforts that are shaping a more secure future, Age of Real or Agenda. And to guide us on this journey, we have our expert back with us. So let's talk solutions. I mean, where do we even begin to tackle these complex security challenges?
Well, it's a multifaceted problem, right? So the solutions need to be multifaceted as well. But I think one of the most important starting points is, robust testing.
Okay. So when you say testing, are you talking about like, the typical software testing that's done for any application?
It goes beyond that. We need to test specifically for those like AI specific vulnerabilities. We need to like think like an attacker, try to anticipate their moves, and design tests that actually mimic, real world attack scenarios.
So you're talking about things like, adversarial attacks,
Mhm.
data poisoning, trying to like trick the AI into making bad decisions. So essentially like ethical hacking, but for AI.
It's exactly. We need to push these systems to their limits, find the breaking points
Yeah.
and then strengthen those weak spots.
That makes sense. It's like stress testing a bridge before you open it to traffic. You want to
Yeah.
make sure it can handle the load. Now, what about all that third-party software that AI relies on? We talked about supply chain attacks earlier
hmm
and how vulnerable those dependencies can be. How do we manage that risk?
Well, thorough vetting of any third-party software it's crucial. We need to know where our code is coming from, what security measures those vendors have in place. It's about, minimizing the risk of inheriting someone else's vulnerabilities.
It's like checking the ingredients list before you bake a cake, right? Make sure nothing, nasty sneaks in.
Perfect analogy. And just like with food safety, we need like, clear accountability. If something goes wrong with an AI system, we need to know, where the breakdown occurred, who's responsible. So robust audit trails and logging they're crucial. It's about being able to trace decisions back to their source.
So it's like a detective's like case file. You need the evidence to figure out, what happened, who did it,
Yeah.
and how to prevent it from happening again. Now, we've also talked quite a bit about, the importance of human oversight in all of this.
Mhm.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Like, what does responsible AI governance look like in practice?
It starts with establishing, clear ethical guidelines for AI development and deployment. We need to define what's acceptable, what's not, oxycarry, when it comes to, AI decision making. And those guidelines, they need to be embedded in the design of the systems themselves, not just an afterthought.
So it's not just about preventing the AI from, doing bad things. It's about making sure it's doing the right things for the right reasons.
Exactly. And that's where human experts, they need to be in the loop. People who can monitor the AI's behavior,
Hmm.
understand its decisions, and step in if necessary. We need to acknowledge that AI, as powerful as it is, it's not infallible.
So it's like having like a safety net, recognizing that there will be times
Yeah.
when human judgment and intervention are needed.
Okay. I'm starting to feel like a little more optimistic. It sounds like there are a lot of things that we can do to manage these risks, but are we being like realistic? Is true AI security even achievable? Or is it like, a constantly moving target? It's definitely a moving target. But that's the nature of, cybersecurity in general, isn't it? It's an ongoing process, not like a one-time fix. We need to adopt a mindset of like continuous learning, adaptation. We need to constantly update our defenses as new threats emerge. And we need to be prepared to evolve our strategies as the technology, advances.
Like an endless game of chess, always trying to anticipate your opponent's next move.
Exactly. But here's the good news.
Hmm.
We're getting better at this game all the time. We're developing, new tools, new techniques, new ways of thinking about AI security. And as the field matures, we're going to see even more progress, in the years to come.
That's reassuring. So it's not about like eliminating risk entirely.
Yeah.
It's about managing it responsibly and being prepared to adapt as the landscape changes.
Precisely. And that's where I think collaboration becomes like so crucial. We need researchers, developers, policymakers, the public, all working together to create a safe and beneficial future for AI.
It's a team effort, a collective responsibility to ensure that AI is, used for good. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. We've explored the dark side, the potential threats, the vulnerabilities that keep security experts up at night. We've also explored the solutions, the innovations, all that collaborative spirit that's driving this field of AI security forward. And I think the key takeaway here is that while the challenges are significant, we're not powerless. We have the knowledge, we have the tools, and we have the collective will to shape a future where agentic AI is both powerful and secure. So a big thank you to our expert for, guiding us through this complex and rapidly evolving landscape. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. If you're, hungry for more we highly recommend checking out the research paper that inspired this conversation. It's called Securing Agentic AI: Threats, Risks, and Mitigation. You'll find a link to it in the show notes. And as always, stay curious, keep exploring, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.